Hello and welcome to the OXM report, brought to you by Official Xbox Magazine. This week we've come to see Ubisoft to see Ezio's story wrapping up in Assassin's Creed Revelations. First of all, you just want to introduce yourself and tell us your role in the game.
Yeah, so I'm Alexandre Bro. I'm the lead game designer on Assassin's Creed Revelation.
Cool. So first of all, obviously Assassin's Creed now has become kind of a bit of a big deal, and this is the third game featuring Ezio, who's actually become quite a fan favourite at the moment. How's the reactions that been? Has it been a kind of mixed bag?
I think it's pretty positive reaction. Of course, Ezio, I think it's a character that on our side we really love, and I think player appreciate him, and I think to be able to have the final chapter of his story, closing his storyline, will be really appreciated by the fan because at the end of Brotherhood there's still so many things in suspense. And Ezio, and also with Desmond, so having that final game that will take everything together from AC1 to Brotherhood, because on top of Ezio we'll also have Altair in the game, and with Desmond, so it's really an interesting game because we'll have those three assassins and we'll really see how their fate and destiny will all come together and what is their interaction between all of them. So I think it will be really interesting for the fan.
Absolutely.
That part.
I mean, I don't want you to give away any spoilers for this, because obviously I'll confess, I'm still not quite finished with Brotherhood myself, so I'm kind of keeping my ears shut at the moment with all this. But can you give us a flavour of what we can expect in terms of the story? Anything like?
In terms of story, like I was saying, there's the three parts. Still, the main element will be the conclusion of Ezio's story. It's interesting because in the first game we saw he became an assassin in Assassin's Creed 2, and the Brotherhood we saw he became the master, how he built a guild. But now, but in those two games he was driven by revenge because his family was killed, his uncle is killed at the beginning of Brotherhood. In Revelation it's different. He's seeking for answers. He wants to know more about the origin of the assassins. He wants to, so in a sense, can reflect what the player wants. Ezio as the player wants more answer. Want to know why he's doing all that, what's the purpose of the assassins, so that quest will reflect what the player will learn throughout the game. So I think that's the big element. Also there's the Desmond story part. I really can't reveal much about that because it's almost spoiler all over the place. There's not much we can say, but it will be really interesting. It will feature a completely new gameplay aspect, and also we'll be able to see more like all the consequences of what happened at the end of Brotherhood, how it will continue toward it, and give a hint of what's waiting for Desmond in the future. So,
well, talking about Desmond, actually, that's a really interesting point, because I think one of the most fascinating things about this series is we've seen from the first Assassin's Creed game, we've seen it advance quite a lot in terms of every new iteration gets more technically advanced and more interesting and adds new things in a way that really kind of works really well so far. But it's kind of clear that we're working our way through history, and it's going to reach a point, of course, when there's no more history to do, and it's going to be just in Desmond's hands. Now, I mean, God knows how many assassins we've gone through the Animus with by this point, but we're clearly working towards something where we are going to see Desmond becoming this sort of incredible assassin in the real world and facing it. I mean, how long? I mean, obviously it's difficult to say because at the moment it's such a long period, but how many years do you think we're going to have before we get to that stage?
I really can't. On my side, since I'm working on Revelations, that aspect of the brand of the franchise, I don't have that information, and so sorry for that.
That's fine. I'm just wondering if it's going to be 10 years, 15 years, you know what I mean? But obviously, I mean, what we've seen today a lot of is the multiplayer, which obviously in Brotherhood, the multiplayer kind of came out of nowhere with that, where no one really saw it coming, and it was one of those things where it sounded kind of interesting, but when you actually got your hands on it, it's pretty fascinating stuff. What kind of improvements and additions have you made this time?
For the multiplayer, one of the main aspects for the multiplayer is we really took care to listen what the fan wanted to improve, and we went in that direction. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing the best service as possible with the multiplayer, so we had more support so that it's easier with a friend hub. We also added customization and of course just new gameplay element. There's new game modes, new maps, new character you can play, a new series of assassination you can pull out, and a lot of small buttons and tweaks just to make sure that the experience flows better and is better for the player. So.
Absolutely. I mean, you must find as well that it's kind of the base of the gameplay, the base of the way it plays. It's kind of always been quite simple in a way. You know, the first game was very much sort of the kind of free running and the climbing was very basic. And as we've gone along, we've seen all these additions. Do you feel you have to be sensitive when making new additions to the gameplay, that you're not going to twist it too much and change it too much from what fans have got used to?
Yeah, we are really careful about that. And the other element, like you just mentioned, in each game we are adding new elements. We are making the game denser and denser, and it's already a game that has a lot of gameplay in it and a lot of elements that fans find interesting. So we were really careful in what we were choosing. What we wanted to do was not just adding next to it, but trying to find a system that would serve to consolidate the systems that are already in place. And if speaking of one of the biggest additions we are doing, like the hook blade, which is an improvement of the hidden blade, and the bomb crafting, those two systems are within that philosophy. Like for the hook blade, we are building it so that it's useful both in navigation, in fight. So it creates a bridge between those two systems. You're now able to transition faster from fight to combat to navigation, and navigation to fight. So it's useful in free running, all that aspect. So we wanted to consolidate and bring back together those two pillars of gameplay. Same thing with the bomb crafting, where we wanted to link more all the economic aspects. Now, since you'll be able to collecting bomb ingredients throughout the city, exploration of the city, buying some of them, and with it you're able to create a variety of bombs that will fit the player playstyle. And again, some will be more useful in combat, other in stealth. So it's really the system we were aiming to add the consolidating aspect that brings everything together more than just adding and adding, because to a certain point there's already so much stuff in that game that we were really careful in the way that we were adding it so that it doesn't break the balance, that the player will still feel comfortable within it, but we still need to have those elements that gives it a fresh feeling and feels that it's a all new game, an all new experience, that it's really worth playing.
And also, as you were saying with the bombs, it's quite a fascinating inclusion because you've got like hundreds of different combinations you can make. But that in kind of combination with the new kind of eagle sense ability, where you can see where people are going almost and see like guard routes.
Yeah.
To me, one of the things that we were very conscious of at OXM was the fact that it kind of this combination of being able to set traps and then watch people kind of moving towards them. It's started to feel actually in recent years, as we've seen Ubisoft kind of moving away from the traditional Splinter Cell ideas into something a bit different. It's almost like Assassin's Creed is becoming a little bit more like old school Splinter Cell. Was that something you guys were vaguely aware of when you were designing it?
And it's something we consider because, like I was saying with the bombs, we wanted to make sure that it was supporting all the pillars within the game, and the stealth aspect, which is often through the social aspect where you're able to blend higher groups to distract guard, is quite an important aspect of the Assassin's Creed franchise. And we were wondering what are the new other elements that would improve that stealth aspect, and we decided that with the bomb we were able to reinforce it in combination with the eagle sense, so we will have that more of a tactical feeling that you're able to do with the stealth, but at the same time we kept the freedom aspect of Assassin's Creed, so the player will really be able to tackle the challenge the way he wants. If he decides that he wants to use more the free running aspects, like evading quickly the guard with the free running or to fight them, it's still open to them. So in that aspect we really try to stay fidel to the franchise philosophy for the gameplay and that freedom aspect, which is so important.
With the bombs as well, actually, one thing we think is interesting, there's so many different combinations of bombs. Now, we've noticed obviously in the multiplayer that there's a humiliation aspect, and that's a kind of fun aspect of it. When you are being hunted in some of the game modes, it's less about trying to kill people hunting you, it's more about roughing them up slightly, walking off and going, ah, you idiot. With the bombs in the game, can you give away, are there going to be like any kind of maybe combinations that are going to be maybe more funny, maybe more amusing than necessarily deadly, and ways you can just sort of, I don't know, I mean, is there anything like that in the game?
On the single player part, yeah, there's some combination of bomb depending how you use it. That
oh yeah, I'm talking about single player. Yeah, in sense of, are there any? I'm talking just about the single player.
In the single player, yeah, okay. Yes, in the single player, we have some combination of bombs that are more based on the reaction of the play people. We have some bombs that allow to scare some of the guards, so it has that. I don't know if funny is the right term for it, but it's more playing with the guard. So we have that, a little bit of that elements where, like you were talking for the humiliation, we can have those really cool setup where the guard, you are able to lure them and kill them really in a satisfying way. Yes.
Finally, we've done a bit of maths on this and we've looked at it, and we can't help but notice that ECO is about 50, which means technically, in this period of time, he should probably be dead. And you know, he's running around climbing buildings. It's not technically very accurate. How do you respond to that?
Actually, he's a guy that is in excellent shape, and one thing that we must keep in focus, I think, even at that time, even if people were usually dying way sooner, the ones who were living longer were still in good shape because if they were keeping exercise. And it's the same thing, Altair, without giving too much detail, managed to live extremely long, so that's really part of the assassins that they are able to.
Older than Ezio? Did Altair live to be older than Ezio?
I won't say too much detail about that, but we'll cover really different periods of his life. So,
right, so I mean, the main thing to take away from this, it seems, that if you want to still be able to clamber up buildings when you're in your 60s, then become an assassin. It's a really good workout.